Hello and welcome everybody. I am Rachel and I am the corporate event planner here at Triple Seat. I'm in charge of planning all of our events, from our customer appreciation happy hours to our EventCamp conference to these webinars and everything in between. So glad that you all could join us. I'm so excited that events are returning in person, but we also know that the virtual aspect is still part of that. So this webinar is very timely. Hybrid events are very much a trend right now. And even our event camp that we're planning this year, we're planning on having it be hybrid. So I'm so excited to be joined by some New York-based event professionals, both on the planner and operator side, Alicia, Schiro, and Tricia Walters. So they're going to give us some insights and some predictions and what they're hearing around the hybrid trend that we're seeing. So I think just to set the tone for everybody, we'll do about 30 to 45 minutes of like a roundtable discussion, and feel free to ask any questions you have in the Q&A section. Feel free to chat with each other in the chat, and we will answer questions at the end. So let's just jump right in and get started. So first of all, welcome Alicia and Tricia.
Hi guys, thanks for having us.
Yeah, do you both kind of want to introduce yourself and give everyone a little bit about your background? We can start with Alicia.
Sure. So I've been in the event industry now for almost 15 years. I started actually doing trade shows for a technology company. And then from there, I went to an advertising company and did their global internal events for 6 years, which was really a blast. It was an advertising firm and we got to have a bar in our office. So great is that.
It's always fun.
And then I went to an event startup company. And I was there for about 2 years. And then I decided to start my own company, and Aced Events was born.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then Tricia, what about you?
Yeah, so I actually started my career in finance on the marketing and events side. I was at this boutique firm for about 2 years. Really disliked it, if I'm being completely transparent. Woke up one morning, decided to quit my job and figure it out. It's what you do in your 20s, right? So I was able to get a very junior level events position within a hospitality company in the city, and worked my way up through that avenue. Alicia and I actually met at the startup, and I am currently with a hospitality group that oversees food and beverage operations for standalone venues and hotels.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of figuring out what you want to do early on in your career.
For sure.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. So just to start off, for people who may not know, or just to give like a little overview, what is a hybrid event and how is it different than a virtual event? Alicia, I know you're kind of the expert.
Yeah, I had to learn fast, right? So forget everything you know and just start over. So basically, it's simple. A hybrid event is really just an extension of an actual event. So if you're setting up, working in a venue, putting, a regular event together as you normally would, but let's say you want to expand your audience, right? You want to get to the folks who are still not comfortable attending events in person. Right. So basically you bring in audio visual, you set up a live stream, and then you can send that out to your attendees that are home that didn't necessarily want to come in person. So that does a couple of things, right? The positive side is, even if a venue is limited on guest count, they're not anymore. So now you can expand that audience, a ton to, you can go as high as 10,000 people. I mean, if you're using Zoom or whatever you're using, really it's unlimited. So I would say expanding the audience is the biggest asset to doing a hybrid event.
Right, definitely. So expanding the audience, I would say like that's one of the benefits. What are some like other benefits do you think of hosting hybrid events? Tricia, do you have any other insights?
Yeah. So I know just from speaking with clients, it's definitely a cost savings. They aren't paying for a price per person for food and beverage, or whatever the fees of that venue are, which is definitely a bonus. I think from the venue side, that's probably the biggest thing for our clients that we're seeing.
Yeah. And Alicia?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things, right? So you can also get creative with that. So you can send out kits now to your attendees, to make them feel like they're still part of it. So we're doing a lot of that. We're still sending out kits and kind of tying it into whatever the event is. So that's another component of it. And I would say from there, I think those are really the main reasons, for doing it. Expanding the audience, cost savings, you get this extra bonus at home with your kit, and you're not compromising anyone's safety. So that's really the value.
Definitely. So what kinds of virtual events have you hosted? Have you done a lot of like sending the kits out, things like that?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was something, I think companies also had to learn to do because, from personal experience, it didn't all go as smooth as we would have liked. You're reinventing the wheel of doing something that has never been done before. So during COVID last year, it was all very new. So I was working with a chef and his team was sending out meat steaks. And it was an utter disaster.
Oh, God.
The meat arrived late. It got stuck, FedEx and whatnot, whatever. The point being, it did not arrive edible. So, fast forward till now, we've learned a lot. And I think now the kits are really savvy and creative and fun. We're using, the freezer packs and everything is flash frozen, or what do you call it when you, why am I losing my train of thought here? When you suck out the, and preserve it. I'm trying to think of the word. Anyway,
yeah.
So we've come a long way with that, and things are definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I definitely feel like 2020 was the year that it was like our experiment year, and now this is the year where it's like taking off. Things we kind of know how they go. I think venues too on that side, they've gotten a handle on it.
For sure. I think it was a lot of trial and error in the very beginning. A lot of big catering companies and venues, they're just not used to doing any type of delivery service. And so it was kind of, figuring out what delivers well, what can travel, what's going to show up in one piece and not 100 when it arrives to the client. Right. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's great that it's nice that everyone's so forgiving last year too. I think everyone's just like, oh, well, this is.
Yeah. This year, not so much. So this year's very different. The pressure is on. And that's another reason for a hybrid, because people now, when we're doing Zooms, because the virtual events are still full force, they're still going full force. And because of that, the expectation of the quality of the production has to be elevated. So we're pretty much producing TV shows now. So when people are watching these, it's as if you're watching, ESPN. And that is literally what we're telling the talent as well. Especially when we hear the talent say, I've done 100 of these, I've done 1,000 of these. And my feedback is, I really don't care.
Yeah.
The point is, it is not what you're used to doing. We're not just putting the Zoom in front of you anymore. You need to have a camera. You need to have earbuds with built-in microphones. You have to have lighting. We are producing events now as if it was a TV show.
Yeah. So would you say that's one of the hardest parts you think now this year about doing the virtual / hybrid is making sure that it's all produced correctly and
it's definitely more challenging for sure. And just managing everyone's expectations as far as, what the client wants and what the talent needs to see in order for them to be successful. Whether you're going to do a webinar versus a meeting. I mean, there's a lot of things that we've learned. And now when a client asks, I can tell them, this is what we know works. This is, keep it interactive as much as possible. These are the things people like. This is the engagement level. So now we have all of that information.
Definitely. So when you were sourcing a venue for hybrid events, so say you're having an event in person, but you're also having, you know, the virtual aspect, like what elements are most important to you?
For me, yeah. I would say when I'm looking, I want to see the first thing in any form of research, especially now because all of my contacts and connections have changed and moved to different places. So I think the first place you look is Google. You Google venues and you go to their website. And I can tell you right now, if I get to the website and it doesn't have their meeting space on there, photographs, capacities, I move on to the next one.
Right.
Because it takes that much more time for me to reach out directly to the venue and get in touch with them, which is another thing on the website. You should have an actual person with their email, not some random info at event venue, blah, 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 because that tends to get lost in the abyss somehow. So if you have an actual person's name and email, makes it that much easier for me and for anyone to reach out and get the information that we need really quickly to make a decision. You know, my clients give me basically, I would say, less than 24 hours to respond back with answers. And that means finding the venue. So if I go to a website and that information isn't there, even restaurants, the most beneficial thing in a restaurant is if you have a PDR, a private dining room, put a photo on there and list like capacity, this amount, or even if you're a venue, the same thing. We have X amount of spaces. These are the capacities. That will eliminate all the back and forth. So I can immediately just reach out and be like, this works great. What do you need? How do we get the date? That's it.
I totally agree. I feel like whenever I send specs to any kind of venue, my second question, once they respond, is, do you have a photo of the space? Like, I just need to see, I need to like visualize. And then like my third question is about floor plans, but I totally agree with you. So those, like if a venue didn't have those things, would you say like that would be a turnoff for me? Or is that like you're on to the next venue? Like what is something venues do that you would be like, this won't work for me or my event?
If I don't hear back literally within a day, I move on. Yeah, there's just no waiting. Like they have to be faster with the response. I mean, because, you know, clients want answers and I can't not provide them. So I would just have to move on. So I would say turnaround time is so important.
For sure. So should venues be promoting their virtual packages or the fact that they can handle kind of virtual aspects of events on site on their website? Or how should they start promoting those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. If they can create these packages, I know Tricia's done some of that and she'll, you know, speak on that as well. But 100%, if you have packages with audio visual recommendations, that saves the planner a ton of time. So it's very helpful to have, whether they're making a recommendation for an audio visual company or they actually have the packages themselves because they have, you know, an exclusive with someone. All of that is very important.
Yeah. So Tricia, do you want to speak a little more like how should venues or how can venues better promote themselves as local?
Yeah. So I know for me personally, when the world kind of ended and we entered into this, you know, virtual reality, let's call it, you know, things that we wouldn't have necessarily put focus on, like AV in some of our spaces and venues. We went in and redid our event decks. You know, we added verbiage to our websites to kind of outline the capabilities. So when planners like Alicia were doing the venue source for clients, they can easily see that we have the ability to produce these hybrid or virtual events. We also have a partnership with a AV company. And so I think that's important. Could also be, you know, a little annoying for planners like Alicia who have relationships. However, I think it's taught myself and my team, you know, kind of questions to expect. We have someone to help us troubleshoot. I know personally a year and a half ago, I would kind of just hand over any AV questions to someone who was versed on them. now I have the ability to answer them, which has been, a good learning experience.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like at least knowing a little bit about the AV side is always beneficial.
Yeah. I think it helps, add a layer of comfort to planners that you're working with, because, they feel comfortable working with someone who knows, what to expect, what type of questions, how to troubleshoot, if something goes wrong, they're able to, act quick and help.
Right. So I know, since we're on the topic of AV companies, I know there's a little bit of conflicting opinion. So it's nice when a venue has a contact, and a venue or an AV company that they work with. But Alicia, I know planners like you and I, we like to kind of bring in our own AV company. So how do you work with venues on that? I guess is
Yeah, great question.
Kind of lost a little.
I think, where it gets tricky is if it's a hotel, right?
Yeah.
Not my favorite
scenario.
Because, we're still dealing with unions at most hotels, and they will have an exclusive with an audiovisual company that you have to use. Now, the issue is they are always more expensive. So I think one thing they maybe can consider is, price matching if you're going to lose the event, because sometimes the AV is more than the cost of the actual event. So when a client sees those fees and they're like, this makes no sense, can you find us another venue? Then I have to now go look for another venue that doesn't have an exclusive with an AV company.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, taking more of my time to go and do all that. So my suggestion is, if I find, an AV company and their price is like $3,000 less or whatever it is, if the hotel was agreeable to maybe match that, they wouldn't lose the event.
Right.
So, that could be something, obviously on a case by case, but it could be something that they entertain, because otherwise I will have to go look for another venue, because at the client's discretion, they're not going to pay as much for the AV as they are for the actual event.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen a number of times. So,
right.
Just what it is.
And then Tricia, as a venue or somebody who's worked on the operator side, how do you usually find these AV companies that you partner with, or, how do you decide who to partner with?
Yeah, so I've actually been working with the same AV company for about 7 or 8 years. For me, the deciding factor was how reliable they are, how quickly they get back to questions I have, how they can, interface with a client, because sometimes we do, a pass through, and just, their reliability in general. Whether they show up on time, if they're 15 minutes early and not showing up, right at the scheduled start time, and their flexibility with pricing, because to Alicia's point, sometimes clients are working with a specific budget, and, you get put kind of in the middle, because, you want to try and work something out. However, at the end of the day, it's another company you're working with. And so I've been fortunate enough to, create a partnership with a company who is very flexible because of the amount of business we send to them.
That's awesome. And then I guess, so I don't know if either of you can speak to this, but I'm going to ask it. What kind of equipment is needed when you do a hybrid event? Or Alicia, I guess, what are certain things you ask your venue to make sure they can accommodate what you're trying to do at their venue?
Truckloads of equipment. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think really, it again, it's going to depend on the event and what you're doing, right? But for the most part, I would say one thing that's always a miss a lot of times is if you have somebody speaking, you really want to make sure that there's a stage. Mm-hmm. And not all venues have that, so you would have to ask the AV company if they can bring in a stage, or you outsource it to someone else. But having whoever is speaking elevated, or if you're doing a fireside chat, I've had that happen many times to people where they want to do a fireside chat, but the chairs are really low to the ground. So then your attendees can't see anyone.
Yeah.
That's a major disaster, right? So you want to make sure you have either a stage, or then if you don't, have people sitting on stools. So, there's that part of the tie-in to not just the electrical equipment, which is, great cameras. They have, sounding board, where they do the switching of multiple cameras.
Strong Wi-Fi connections.
Yeah, no, seriously, that is at the venue. The Wi-Fi definitely is, can be a serious issue if you don't have a good Wi-Fi.
And do you guys ever do like tests before with the venues, or how do you is it?
So yeah, that's a good point. And I'll turn it over to Tricia after I just say this one thing. Normally you can't do it days in advance, right? Because you'd be paying for the venue twice. So what we always do is get there 2 hours ahead of schedule. AV has to arrive 2 hours before. So then I would say, Tricia, what can we do to make sure that we have extra time?
Right. Yeah. So we'll accommodate requests as long as we don't have an event before or after where it would interfere. But from the venue side, we always have our AV partners show up early. And we have just our tech equipment that is in-house. For most of our properties is checked regularly to make sure everything's working properly. None of the speakers are blown out. Our microphones work. Our Wi-Fi connection is strong. So those are things that, we do on the venue side regularly just to kind of maintain all of our equipment.
Yeah, I would imagine you would need to. I would be so paranoid. I mean, I'm paranoid right now with this going. What if I drop out, or, always those little things you never expect, but you always want to be prepared for. So
right.
It's definitely good to have backup plans.
Yep.
Let's see. So as a venue, I guess, Tricia, how do you promote your virtual capabilities? So I know we've talked about website, but do you also send emails to past clients? How are you finding new people to, get to come to your venue, getting leads?
Yeah. So yes, we do. We have a marketing campaign where we do e-blasts. We obviously, because we're a venue and now that New York City is open and we want in-person events, we are not marketing too hard right now for virtual. But during COVID, back to Alicia and the to-go kits, our company created kits, for specific clients that could be delivered. So when they were doing these webinars, everybody would feel a sense of connection and they were in the same place, enjoying the same meal or the same hors d'oeuvres or the same cocktail, whatever it was. So that was a way, we worked through that in the middle of COVID. Now more so, it's just, just outlining our AV capabilities and walking through those hybrid event requests with clients.
Are you getting a lot of requests for hybrid? What would you say you get more of? Just in-person, hybrid?
Right now it's in person. People want to party in person, which is good and exciting and obviously great for venues.
Right. And would you say those are more social and corporate's a little more hybrid right now?
So I would say it's actually a healthy mix at this point. I am noticing that corporate is a lot of the requests that we're getting are on the smaller scale. So we've, recently been receiving a lot of holiday requests, and rather than a 250 company-wide party, I'm seeing a lot of clients split their events up and doing, 75 at one location, 75 at another, but also sourcing larger venues so their guests have space and feel comfortable and safe.
Definitely. And then, Alicia, I feel you might have touched a little bit about this, but how do you keep a virtual audience engaged? So I think we keep referencing the kits, but I think those are, one of the main ways to keep everybody connected and engaged. Yeah. But
for me, the way I did it last year and this year also is really the talent. My clients are going after C-level executives, and they're getting invited to these constantly, the same as they would a live event, right? So not much has changed. How do you get them to show up at a live event? How do you get them to attend a Zoom, or a virtual, which is, a little bit more difficult. So I would say talent. So I book a lot of celebrity talent, whether they're doing a talk or, it's a chef or it's a musician, or it's someone just giving a talk on what they're familiar with. So I would say it's really your talent.
Yeah, like a big name grabber. Definitely. Okay. So I think we've kind of gone through everything that I had for you guys. So we can see if anybody has any questions, if they want to put them in the chat. So we do have one. What is an example of like kits that you've done?
So ones that I've done were pertaining to the event that we're doing. So we've done whiskey kits, wine kits, cocktail kits, guacamole kits, and kits for every single chef event that I've done. So which includes the entire menu of whatever they're making. So all of those types of things. Even a magic kit. I'm doing a magic kit right now. I can't wait.
Oh, that's kind of fun. Yeah. And then Tricia, how do you work with like the planners that you work with? Do you create kits for them? Do you have kits that you market out and like people want? How does it work?
Yeah, so we obviously have some like cookie cutter kits that we market out. However, we were doing a lot of custom kits, and ours is mostly food and beverage. So unlike Alicia, I wasn't able to do anything too creative like a magic kit. But yeah, we definitely, have done some custom kits for clients.
Nice. Exciting. And we can give it, oh, here we go. So how do you market them and like how do you price them? And do you partner with a shipping service? I guess, how do all the logistics work with?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I don't have all the answers. I know in terms of pricing, we take things into consideration like how much the packaging costs, how much obviously the food and beverage that are within the kits cost. Are we sending utensils? Are we doing any type of, company branding, things like that? In terms of shipping, that was not my department, so I really can't answer that. And then marketing, we added them into our event decks. So any client that was inquiring for, an event that may not have been during COVID, but for the end of 21 or the beginning of 2022, it was in their face when they received our event kit. So they would see, oh, wow, this company does offer kits. So if we have a virtual event, we can go back to them and, potentially use them for catering needs.
Definitely. All right, we can give it a couple seconds to see if anybody else has any questions. Is there anything else you guys kind of want to add about hybrid events or anything you don't think I touched on?
No, I think we covered a lot. I think that, no matter what it is, just, do something. I mean, that's really the goal here, right? It's like, you don't want to just wait and not do anything. So just constantly keep pitching ideas to your clients and hopefully, something sticks, right?
I would say, I think one of the things like I've heard somebody say on a webinar once was like, your clients don't really know what they want until you put it in front of them. So it's always good to just keep that going.
Yep.
The creative juices flowing. And I don't know, I'm the same way. Like, unless I see it, or like, keep your Instagram updated, keep your website updated, like let us know what you're doing at your venue, because that way we know we want to be there. Like, how else?
Right. Yeah. And if they, some venues too, and I'm sure Tricia can also touch on this, is for holiday parties. So, if they are starting to put together holiday packages, that's always good to send out, because I know I look for stuff like that. To then to my clients, and say, oh, look, this venue is doing a package of, hors d'oeuvres and, mid-tier bar, and it's for 2 hours. So you could do something short and sweet, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think doing holiday packages and putting together decks right now for hybrid holiday events it's so beneficial, because you have to start thinking about that stuff early, and especially now, like you're hearing venues and things are being booked for 2022. So you just want to make sure you get all your stuff in. We did have another question. So for fundraisers at a hotel, how do you do a hybrid? So Alicia, do you have any experience?
Fundraiser at a hotel, how do you do a hybrid? Well, first it's going to depend on the hotel, right? So if you can bring in your own AV, like we talked about earlier, in my opinion, that's the best way to go. But if the hotel has an exclusive with an audiovisual company, then you would have to work with them. And basically you're just asking them to live stream your event. So you would be asking them what platform they use to live stream. And then I would definitely recommend doing your own research to make sure that live stream can support whatever guest count it is that you have. Like some are limited, some are not. So that will really determine who you go with, and of course price. And another question to ask with regards to the live streaming is, how do you want your audience to view it at home, right? So there's some platform, not to get too technical here, but some platforms are only one-way communication. And if you have someone off-site that needs to communicate with someone on-site, one-way communication does not work. So that platform will not work for you. But hopefully the audiovisual company that you're working with can sit down with you and ask you these questions. Like, what do you want your event to be? How do you want your viewers to be able to view it? And that will determine what they bring in as far as the platform.
And then Rebecca just asked a question I was just going to ask too. So do you have a camera person who walks around with the camera for the live? Do you have multiple different shots? So I've seen it personally done, I think, both ways kind of. So like you said, either just one shot and you're just live streaming the one shot, or you need multiple cameras set up. So do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion now, because like I said, people want elevated production, we do multiple cameras. So especially if we're working with a chef, we'll have a live feed of a camera close up and a live feed of just him. So you'll have two camera views for the customer. Or when you're really tech savvy, your on-site audiovisual team will have a switchboard and they can switch from camera to camera. So you have one view and they are switching from camera to camera. Or you could have two separate cameras and just have the individual look at different cameras. It's really, again, how do you want the audience to view the experience? So those are the questions that you want to be aware of.
Right, yeah. And I think we've said it before, just having a good AV partner is key.
I mean, it literally makes or breaks your event. So
you're a venue or a planner.
Exactly. Yep. They are really the cream of the crop, you know?
Yeah. They love to talk all that technical stuff too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm just like, as long as you can make it happen.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we have. So I just want to thank you guys both for joining us and for sharing your expertise. I hope everybody who joined learned a lot, and we will follow up. If anybody has any questions, feel free to follow up with us and we'll get you some answers. But
awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Tricia. Bye.
Bye.